Hi there, Linda from Let's Talk Prepping, and I had a whole nother video all ready to record for you when I saw this. This is from headlinewealth.com, and it says Democrats push for a great reset of the Federal Reserve, August 8th, 2022. That's today. Now, personally, I'd like to get rid of the Federal Reserve, but if the Democrats are pushing for it, it's not to get rid of it. So let's see what they want to do now. It just amazes me. It kind of blows my mind that all these things are happening right now. House Democrats are crafting executive orders, passing bills, and proposing legislation that will remake the Fed by expanding its mandates to include, are you ready? The Great Reset, climate change, and stakeholder capitalism agendas. They would force it to take on politically charged emissions like controlling greenhouse gas emissions, promoting equal employment. Now, this is the Federal Reserve we're talking about, not some other government agency. Income, wealth, and affordable credit outcomes across racial and ethnic groups. And the worst one, of course, is issuing a new central digital currency. Let me highlight that. Issuing a new central bank digital currency. These new mandates would almost certainly fuel inflation and permanently depress economic growth. The Fed would be forced to actively allocate bank credit in an attempt to prevent global warming, engineer equal outcomes for politically favored racial and ethnic groups, issue a tokenized dollar that will drain deposits from the private banking system, raising the cost of and limiting access to bank credit. Once they have this digital dollar, it's pretty much all over for us. Now, the Federal Reserve Act in 1913 required the Fed to provide an elastic currency, not decide which industries get bank loans and which do not. So under the new mandates, the Fed would require banks to make politically favored loans similar to the way banks dispense credit in China, not in the US, in China. And history shows that when governments direct bank credit, economic growth suffers because credit is diverted to politically connected, inefficient companies instead of funding productive companies that drive economic growth. I almost can't read this stuff anymore. It just makes you sick to read it and to see what is happening to our wonderful country and our wonderful system that used to be free enterprise. It says moving from a system where credit is allocated by private market decisions to a system where credit is dispensed by government decree will reduce opportunities and erode the standard of living for all racial and ethnic groups. And if we go down here, we see they say it is hard to imagine that the Great Reset agenda will work out well for Main Street. Great Reset policies have already contributed to inflation by creating regulatory uncertainty that has made it more expensive for U.S. fossil fuel companies to borrow, invest, and increase production. These policies have sparked massive protests and social unrest in countries that have implemented them, including the recent fall of the government in Sri Lanka. Should the Senate sign on, the Fed's role in allocating capital will extend beyond climate change. On June 21st, the House passed H.R. 2543, Financial Services, Racial Equality, Inclusion, and Economic Justice Act. And it's a law that requires the Federal Reserve must carry out its duties in a manner that supports the elimination of racial and ethnic disparities in employment, income, wealth, and access to affordable credit. In addition to H.R. 2543, House Democrats are promising a new legislation that will require the Fed to issue a central bank digital currency. A recently released white paper outlines the characteristics of the proposed retail digital currency. While legislation is yet to be introduced, the push for the Federal Reserve district banks to issue the new Fed digital currency is not a new idea for the progressive left. And they end by saying the administration and the Democrats in Congress are only a few Senate votes away from reimagining the Federal Reserve as an institution that would enforce the progressive left's climate change and income redistribution agendas. Instead of promoting stable prices, maximum employment, economic growth, and equal opportunity for all, the Fed would be transformed into an institution that actively diverts bank credit towards politically favored industries and racial and economic groups. So, this is just one more thing that's happening. So, what does all this mean? Basically, it means that if it passes the Senate, and the way things are now, it probably would pass the Senate, the America that we know will no longer be in effect. They'll be doing everything they can for the Great Reset and the climate agenda. So think about this. You have a small business and you apply for a loan, and they say, oh no, you use too much carbon, you have too many carbon emissions, we can't give you that loan. Or they say, hey, we can't even let you accept credit cards because you don't follow the climate guidelines, and it will be so arbitrary. You're not going to have any way to stop it, not going to have any way to rectify the problem. It's just going to be terrible for everyone in the country. And as an individual, let's say you go to the bank and you say, I want a loan to buy something, a car, anything. And if they decide that for some reason you shouldn't have it, you will be denied, and it won't be based on, hey, we just don't like you or you're a conservative. It's going to be based on, oh, we think that you're not following the climate agenda, or the Great Reset says you will own nothing and be happy. So we're not letting anyone own anything anymore. I mean, once the Federal Reserve is in charge of it, it's almost all over. And forget it if the digital currency goes through. What can we do? I have no idea. I hope somebody in the comments will let us know what we can do and how we can stop it, because to me it almost looks like there's no stopping it now. So please let us know in the comments if you have any ideas on what we can do. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe.